spend years trying to grip reality by the throat, believing if you just try hard enough, control tightly enough, life will finally surrender to your will.
But it never does. The more you force, the more it slips, and somewhere along the way, the pressure becomes unbearable. You don't shatter all at once. You soften quietly, slowly, until one day, without tears or tantrums, you let go. Not out of weakness, but out of wisdom. And in that moment of release, life begins to breathe again. This is the story of that turning point, the sacred space where letting go becomes your greatest act of trust, and life finally responds in ways you never imagined. There's a limit to how long you can hold it all without breaking. And sometimes the breaking doesn't look like shattering. It looks like silence, like forgetting how to laugh without feeling guilty, like staring at your phone with no one to call who actually feels safe. You think if you just push through one more day, it'll get easier. But pushing has become the problem. You've convinced yourself that holding everything together is strength, when deep down, you're terrified of what would happen if you stopped, like taping a cracked mirror and pretending it's whole. That's the trap, thinking your worth depends on your ability to endure. But maybe the ache in your chest isn't a sign of weakness. Maybe it's a quiet invitation, not to collapse, but to exhale, to loosen your grip on the things that were never yours to fix. Because the truth is, control never gave you peace. It only delayed your breakdown, like unclenching a fist that forgot what softness felt like. And the moment you realize that, that's the turning point. The one where surrender isn't failure, it's freedom. It's you finally letting go, not because you're giving up, but because you're ready to live without carrying the weight of what was never yours to hold. They make it sound easy, but just let go. Like it's a button you press or a door you close without looking back. But they don't see the years it took to build that grip. Control wasn't a choice. It was your shelter. It was how you stayed upright in a world that kept shifting beneath you. You didn't hold on because you're stubborn. You held on because you had to. Because somewhere along the way, you learned that if you weren't prepared, if you weren't perfect, something would break. Maybe it was you. Maybe it was someone you loved, but either way, falling wasn't allowed. So letting go, it feels like betrayal, not of others, but of yourself. Because if control kept you safe, then what does surrender make you? Exposed, weak, or maybe finally real? Carl Jung said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." And this is the pain of waking up to the lie that your worth depends on what you carry. You were never meant to be a fortress. You were meant to be human. Loved even when you're not useful. Held even when you're not holding it all together. And that's the truth you've been afraid to touch. Until now. Letting go sounds like freedom. But in the beginning, it feels like free fall. Like stepping out of the only identity you've ever known. One built not from desire, but from defense. That's the part nobody talks about. The grief of shedding the person who kept you alive in rooms that didn't know how to hold you. But here's the truth. That silence you keep avoiding, it's not empty. It's waiting. It's the only place where your real voice lives. And until you're brave enough to hear it, you'll keep mistaking performance for purpose. You deserve more than that. You always have. There comes a moment when everything you've built to keep yourself together starts to fall apart. Not all at once, not in a way anyone else can see, but inside you feel it. A slow unraveling. The mask gets heavier, the smile cracks, the routine that used to feel safe now feels suffocating. You try to fix it, work harder, be better, stay pleasant, stay small, but nothing works. The harder you grip, the more everything slips, and eventually your body says what your soul's been whispering for years, enough. It's strange how the biggest moments in your life arrive without fanfare. No spotlight. No grand decision. Just stillness. You find yourself somewhere ordinary, on the floor, maybe staring at a wall that's seen more of your pain than any person ever has. And in that moment, you don't have answers. You're not even sure you have strength. But what you do have is surrender. The quiet kind. The kind that isn't about giving up, but about no longer pretending. You stop reaching, stop fixing, stop spinning stories around people who are never going to stay. And then something shifts. Not outside you, inside. You breathe. Not out of habit, but from a place you forgot existed. You feel your own heartbeat again. Not in panic, but in presence. And for once, the silence doesn't terrify you. It comforts you. Because hidden underneath all the noise, all the rushing and striving, was something you lost along the way. Yourself. Peace doesn't arrive screaming. It arrives gently, asking nothing of you. Like sinking into water after a long run. You don't fight, you float. It shows up when you're too tired to perform, too honest to pretend, and just raw enough to receive it. And in that exact moment, when everything else fades, life responds. Like a door that only opened once you stopped knocking and stepped back. Not because you fought harder, but because you finally stopped. Somewhere along the way, you were taught that life is a problem, something to fix, to figure out, to solve before the clock runs out. So you tried, you planned, you adjusted, you shaped yourself to fit into timelines, roles, expectations that never quite felt like yours. And when it didn't work, when the job felt empty, the relationship lopsided, the joy missing, you blamed yourself. Thought maybe you just hadn't tried hard enough. But, Carl Jung said, the shoe that fits one person pinches another. What if the problem wasn't you? What if it was the shape you were forcing yourself into? Letting go isn't laziness, it's wisdom. It's knowing you don't have to wrestle life to the ground to make it beautiful. You can soften, you can trust. Because when you stop trying to master every step, life starts to meet you differently. You begin to notice things, not the things you chased, the things that waited, the right people, the right timing, the clarity that doesn't shout but quietly sits beside you like an old friend. You don't have to push to find peace. Sometimes peace is what arrives the moment you stop pushing. And that's not failure, that's alignment. You start to realize the right people don't need convincing. They feel your stillness. They recognize something steady in you, something rare. You're not pulling them in, they're drawn, not to your effort, but to your presence. That's the paradox. The more you release the need to be seen, the more visible you become. The less you grasp, the more you receive. Stillness isn't the absence of movement, it's the presence of power. It's knowing you don't have to chase anything that's truly aligned. And when you finally trust that, you stop exhausting yourself trying to earn what was never meant to be held. You don't just attract more, you attract better, because now you're choosing to. For so long, you lived like a reflex, flinching, fixing, explaining, proving. Every trigger pulled a piece of you outward, scattering your energy across people, problems and expectations that were never yours to carry. You thought endurance was strength, that if you could just take it, survive it, stretch yourself thinner each time, maybe you'd finally be enough. But now, something in you is shifting. The chaos is still there, but you're not inside it anymore. You're watching it from the center, from stillness. You stop chasing clarity in places that only ever offered confusion. You stop defending your peace like it's fragile. It's not, it's rooted. And in that stillness, you realize you don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. You don't have to bleed your truth just to be believed. The more silent you become, the louder your energy speaks. And not everyone deserves a front row seat to that. This isn't you giving up. This is you rising, quietly, unapologetically. You're not here to convince anymore. You're here to embody, to protect your calm like it's sacred, because it is. You are. And now you finally know. Real power doesn't react, it remains. There's a voice inside you that's been waiting patiently, quietly, buried beneath all the noise, not the voice that spins, spirals, or catastrophizes, not the one that echoes old fears or replays every mistake like a broken record. No, this voice is softer, steadier. It doesn't shout to be heard. It doesn't need to. It waits. And when the chaos finally fades, when the proving and pleasing slow to a stop, you start to notice it. A whisper in the stillness, a knowing that feels less like a thought and more like a truth you already knew. It says things you don't want to admit. You're tired. You're allowed to stop. This isn't for you anymore. And maybe that's the hardest part. Realizing clarity isn't always comforting. Sometimes it invites you to leave what's familiar, to trust what you can't see yet. But that voice, it never lies. It never asks you to hustle for your worth or beg for your peace. It just asks you to listen. Because clarity doesn't arrive when you think harder. It arrives when you finally stop forcing, when you release the story that was never yours and return to the truth that always was. You've always known. Now you're just quiet enough to hear it. There's a shift that happens, not in chaos, but in quiet. One day, without warning, the fight inside you slows. Not because you've given up, but because you're finally done trying to prove yourself to people, to outcomes, to a version of life that only ever drained you. You don't reach this moment out of failure. You arrive here because you've grown, because the struggle that once defined you now feels too small to hold the person you're becoming. You no longer need to chase closure or force clarity. You stop gripping every outcome like it's a lifeline. You realize your worth was never something to earn. It was something to remember. And that tight grip you kept on everything, it wasn't protecting you, it was blocking what was already trying to reach you. Letting go doesn't mean you've stopped caring. It means you care enough to stop suffering. Like dropping a bag you didn't realize you'd been dragging for miles. Enough to stop managing what was never yours to carry. Life wasn't punishing you, it was waiting for you to loosen your hold, for you to exhale. And the moment you do, you feel it. The space, the softness, the quiet sense that maybe things are about to move, not because you forced them, but because you finally made room. Trust isn't about sitting back and hoping life sorts itself out. It's not surrendering your power, it's reclaiming it. Because real trust means moving forward without a map, taking the next step even when your voice shakes and the future feels blurred. It's not passive, it's presence. It's you showing up for your life without needing every answer scripted in advance. And that kind of trust, it's radical. Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. That's the quiet power of trust. It reveals what you've been avoiding, the old wounds you've been naming love, the patterns you've been calling destiny. It helps you pause before repeating them again. It invites you to choose alignment over approval, calm over chaos. And no, it's not easy. Choosing peace when your nervous system is built for survival feels unnatural at first. But this is where the quiet rebellion begins. Not with noise, but with noticing. You stop chasing what hurts. You stop gripping what's just familiar. And slowly, peace becomes the new normal. Not because life stopped being hard, but because you stopped abandoning yourself to survive it. This isn't about motivation, it's about memory, remembering who you were before the world convinced you to abandon yourself. Before you learned to bend for love, to shrink for peace, to wear a smile when everything inside you was screaming. This isn't a pep talk, it's a vow, a quiet, steady promise to yourself that you will no longer betray your own soul just to make something broken look whole. That you won't keep chasing people who left the moment you stopped being convenient. It's not your job to be palatable, to be pleasing, to be manageable. You weren't born to be digestible, you were born to be real. And that truth, it's what you're returning to now. Not the polished version, not the one that's always calm, always perfect, but the one who knows stillness is strength, the one who flows, unapologetically, honestly, without gripping life like it owes you something. You weren't born to be manageable, you were born to move mountains, without dragging chains to do it. So let this be your line in the sand. The moment you stop explaining, stop performing, stop forcing, and instead flow. Flow with what feels aligned. Flow with who meets you fully. Flow with who you are, not who they prefer. Write it below, say it aloud, let it rise through you like a truth that finally feels like home. I don't force anymore, I flow. If this message stirred something in you, save this video, watch it again when doubt creeps in. And if you're ready to live from trust instead of tension, the next video is waiting for you. Life responds when you do. Thank you for being a part of Mosaic Mind.